Okay, I am going to mute everyone, but please unmute if you have a question. I have my red light on, so just ignore my red screen. But I am so excited to launch our first ever Goddess of Gains muscle building cohort. This is so much fun because I think all of us coaches at Hungry Fitness really, really prioritize building muscle and preserving lean mass. And I think we're all so passionate about it. And we've done so many fat loss coaching groups. And so to be able to have a group of women that are excited to build muscle and want to optimize their lean mass and also like see a transformation with their body, feel strong. Oops, I just muted myself. Can you guys hear me good? Feel strong and also really improve everything from hormones to strength to longevity and health and energy and libido and sleep. There's just so much to be gained by eating enough to fuel your body so that you feel good and putting yourself in a place that you can build muscle and also have the tools and education so that it isn't so confusing and scary. So we're really, really, really excited to launch this group. And it's myself coaching this group. You've already probably talked a lot to Sam. She is amazing and so good at responding quickly in the app. And Autumn, with her new hair color, is joining us as well. It's so cute, Autumn. And we're just really excited to have all of you. So I want this group to be one where you can just ask questions. Don't hold back. We are here to learn. We're here to support each other. We're here to grow together and most importantly, build muscle. So I'm going to share my screen. This first prep week call is going to be a little sciencey. I want to really talk through just the science of muscle growth and hypertrophy so that you have hopefully a good understanding after this call. And if any questions come up, let me know. And then I also want to make sure everybody saw their email for prep week. I think I had one person that was having issues. I'm going to try to send to a different email. A lot of times our emails will get put in promotion folder because we're mass sending them to everyone. So check your promotions folder. It's different than spam or junk. It's kind of annoying that they do that. But check that. And you should see it from Michaela at hungryfitness.co. But in that email, we have sent resources for each of you. We have our muscle building guide. So that will kind of summarize everything I'm talking about today. Be sure to check that out. We also have our nutrition guide and we have our template for building a meal from single ingredient foods, as well as a grocery shopping list. So check all of that out. It's a lot to read, but when you get a chance, look through it, and that will be a really good kind of refresher for what we're talking about today. So let me share my screen here. Okay, let's see. This works. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see the slide? All right. Okay, well, we're super excited for the next 5 weeks. And we're just going to walk through some education here, as well as just weekly structure, new habits, resources, all of that. So everyone feels really confident going into week 1. Okay, did that switch slides? You guys can see that. Let me add a few more people here too. Oh, we got lots joining. Yay. Okay, so what is hypertrophy? Hypertrophy is the process of increasing the size of your muscle fibers through consistent resistance training and proper recovery. And it's not just about aesthetics. Hypertrophy plays a key role in overall health. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She has a podcast. I don't remember what it's called, but she has done a lot of research on building muscle, especially for women, especially like kind of how that benefits us post-menopause and beyond. And she has stated that muscle is the organ of longevity. This means that health and strength of your muscles directly impact how well you age and maintain vitality throughout your life. So by focusing on building muscle rather than obsessing over fat loss, we foster better metabolic health, physical strength, and even brain function. She emphasizes that we are not over fat as a society, we are under muscled. And I think this is such a good way to look at things beyond like aesthetics, but with health and longevity. But I think a lot of times it's aesthetics that women are after, and they think that they just need to continue to lose body fat and that's going to improve or give them the transformation that they want. And more often than not, it is that they actually just need to build more muscle. And so I'm very excited for all of you that are going to prioritize that this season. This shift in focus helps prevent the damaging effects of yo-yo dieting, which not only strips fat, but also can destroy our skeletal muscle, making long-term health harder to sustain. That is one of the downsides of, drugs. Can be where people are losing like massive amounts of weight. They're typically losing massive amounts of lean tissue, skeletal muscle that they're going to need for the rest of their life. And so even when we are doing fat loss, knowing that slow and steady is going to yield the best results long term is also really important. So muscle building isn't just a short-term pursuit. It's a lifelong quest, in my opinion. It's an investment in your current and future health. Research has shown that maintaining muscle mass reduces the risk of chronic diseases like diabetes and enhances metabolic performance over time. Our ability to manage blood sugar, prevent fractures down the road. I think that is one of the biggest kind of like leading causes of death as we get in our elderly years, and having muscle mass so that we can be functional and move well and be stable is critical to our long-term health and wellness. Resistance training is non-negotiable in my mind, in my opinion, because maintaining muscle only gets harder as we age, making it really, really important to start now and build habits that support us for life. So my slide thing is weird. Okay. All right. So to build muscle effectively, it's important to understand the key physiological mechanisms driving growth. There's three big ones that we need to focus on, and they're mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage and recovery. So I'm going to walk through each of these and why they are important. So first up, mechanical tension. This happens when your muscles are working against resistance, like when you're lifting weights or holding a plank. The tension signals your muscle fibers that they need to adapt and grow stronger. So a key concept here in mechanical tension is progressive overload. You've probably heard us talk a lot about progressive overload. It's like now become a catchphrase on social media, where people say they have a progressive overload program that's special. Essentially, progressive overload, it just means that over time, you need to gradually increase the weight, the reps, or how long your muscles are under tension. If you keep lifting the same weights week after week, your muscles will stop responding because they won't have any reason to continue to grow. So for example, if you've been curling 20-pound dumbbells, bumping it up to 22 pounds or 25 pounds, or adding a couple extra reps, is going to help optimize progressive overload. And those small increases are going to keep your muscles challenged, preventing plateaus and increasing hypertrophy. Research from Schoenfeld, he's very famous in the strength and conditioning space, highlights that mechanical tension is one of the most important factors in hypertrophy. But here's the thing, tension alone isn't enough. You need the next two drivers, metabolic stress and recovery, to help optimize building muscle. So metabolic stress is the second factor in hypertrophy, and this refers to the buildup of metabolites like lactate, hydrogen ions, and creatine that happens during longer sets of endurance-based work. So you've probably felt this as your muscles burn, like maybe in our primer for HF Physique, or some of the higher rep sets that we do often in HF Physique as well, especially on upper body. So what is happening here? As your muscles stay contracted, blood flow is then restricted, and those metabolites they start to build up. This signals your body to adapt by increasing muscle size, and it also causes muscle swelling. That really good pump that you get after a workout is essentially this. So it might adding people, sorry, as I talk. So the pump that you get is temporary, but the metabolic stress it creates drives long-term muscle growth. So that is like a good kind of indicator that you are working those muscles and you're having that metabolite buildup and achieving metabolic stress. So a great way to work this in, which is something that we prioritize with HF Physique, is by using some higher rep sets or drop sets where you'll reduce the weight mid-set and keep it going. Those are good tools essentially to introduce metabolic stress and continue to challenge your muscles in a new way. And then the last piece is muscle damage and recovery. So every time you lift weights, you will create small micro tears in your muscle. And when those muscles repair, they rebuild stronger, preparing you for whatever you throw at them next, essentially, like in very simple terms. So this is where recovery comes in. If you don't allow enough time for recovery, whether that's through sleep, nutrition, active rest days, then you risk overtraining and burnout. This is especially important if you're on the low end of your maintenance, if you're kind of like under eating. With us, we're going to feel a lot better. We're going to feel more energized because we are eating enough food to fuel recovery. So we have the nutrition piece, hopefully, pretty dialed in over the next 5 weeks. But I think a lot of people think that more is better when it comes to training and building muscle. And that's actually not true. It's like the Goldilocks, right? We all have kind of the different optimal amount that we can train depending on our age, depending on our life demands, our stress levels, our history, our training age, how advanced we are with training, how much we're eating. There's so much that can impact sort of the right amount of volume for us. And so we'll talk more through that like over the next month, so that you can start to pay attention. Like, how is my recovery? How are my training sessions? How am I feeling? But it's important with that to take rest days. It's not like there's diminishing returns, right? It's kind of a bell curve. So as you add more volume, more intensity, you start to yield more results. And then at some point, you're kind of maxed out on what's optimal for you. And if we continue to add intensity and volume, then we start to see diminishing returns and, negative impacts. So keeping that in mind, taking your rest days seriously and building recovery strategies in like mobility work, maybe like massages, if that's something you can do, or even a deload week every now and then, just to make sure you keep progressing. So to optimize muscle growth, you need to balance the 3 drivers. Mechanical tension builds strength and size. Metabolic stress triggers adaptation and keeps training interesting, keeps you continuing. I think like pushing through that kind of mental plateau that can happen as well. And then recovery is where the real growth happens. So when you bring all 3 together, you create an environment that challenges your muscles to grow larger and stronger over time. And just talking through kind of a little bit more on hypertrophy and key factors, having progressive overload in your programming. And this is why we program with HF Physique, like pretty much the same thing for 6 weeks. And then we tweak it a little bit for another 6 weeks, because that allows you to really apply progressive overload. You can track your weight, you can track your reps, you can see how you're progressing over time, and like you're continuing to push that progressive overload so that you are increasing resistance or weights or intensity or improving your form and continuing to grow. Where if we were just like changing it every single week, then that would be a lot harder to track and accomplish. Training volume, working all muscle groups with adequate sets and reps. So training volume refers to the total amount of work that you do for each muscle group. So think of it in terms of sets, reps, and exercises. To grow, we want to make sure that every muscle group gets enough love throughout the week. Usually 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week is a good goal to aim for. And having a mix of compound movements like squats and deadlifts that hit multiple muscles at once, and then also adding in isolation work to fine tune and hit those individual muscles that we really want to prioritize. That allows for a more well-rounded kind of development, which is what we are striving for with HF Physique. We definitely prioritize more glutes, quads, hamstrings, shoulders, and back, I would say, because that's what most of our clientele really want to prioritize growing. And then with that, other key factors in hypertrophy, really optimizing recovery, and then making sure we're getting plenty on the recovery side of things, not just taking rest days, but really making sure we're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night, taking the 1 to 2 rest days per week, maybe adding in some active recovery things like walking, stretching, yoga. Those are going to be helpful too, with decreasing soreness. And then taking a deload week if and when needed. We don't program those in HF Physique because we want you to just really take those when needed. A lot of times people will have travel or holidays or vacations. And so those deloads kind of just work their way into every individual's life. And so we would rather you took those when you felt you needed it versus just having it set and programmed. And then on the nutrition side, making sure you're eating enough calories and protein specifically, because building muscle requires building blocks. It requires calories. So you want to be on the high end of maintenance calories or in a slight calorie surplus. But in addition to that, protein intake is going to be your best friend because it will help you build muscle. It will help you repair. And a good rule of thumb to aim for with protein intake, which is where we'll be setting all of your intake, is in that kind of 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. So if you weigh 150 pounds, then that would be 105 to 150 grams of protein per day. And spreading that out across multiple meals throughout the day will help keep you fueled. And it's also, protein is filling. So trying to have 100 grams of protein in one sitting is going to be really challenging. And then I would say, as far as the other macronutrients are concerned, not getting too stressed about macronutrient ratios. We will give you a balanced kind of ratio for your macronutrients. But don't stress if one day you have a higher fat day, or one day you have a higher carb day. I would prioritize hitting within 10% of your protein and 10% of your overall calorie intake. And then if you want to get more specific than that, then having a little bit of carbohydrates before your workout to give you energy and a little bit after to help with recovery is kind of the next focus that I would suggest. So to sum it up, progressive overload keeps your muscles challenged, and training volume makes sure that every muscle group is worked. Rest and recovery let your muscles repair and grow, and then nutrition gives your body the fuel that it needs to build muscle. And if you miss one and progress slows down potentially, but also remembering that something over nothing, right? As long as we're kind of focusing on all of these things and we're being intentional with all of these things, we're going to move the needle in the direction that we want to move it. So don't stress too much. And then just a little bit kind of on the split for optimal muscle growth, as far as just what training suggests and what research suggests and kind of how we program with HF Physique. Research supports training each muscle group 2 to 3 times per week to optimize hypertrophy. This structure balances frequency, but also adequate recovery time. And so that's why you don't see like 2 lower body days programmed back to back with HF Physique. We try to space the lower body days out and the upper body days out, as well as even like cardio, so that we're not overtraining. And we have time for recovery. And then having compound lifts as well as isolated lifts in each session, training intensity. And this is where we'll give suggestions in the notes, usually with HF Physique, in that kind of 65 to 85% of 1 rep max is ideal for building muscle. So usually having like maybe a couple of reps left in the tank and feeling like you're really challenged in a working set. You should feel like maybe if it's 12 reps, those first 3 to 5 feel pretty easy, fairly doable. And then the 5 to 8, you're going to be feeling more challenged. Things are slowing down a little bit. And then the 9 to 12, it's like requires some concentration, requires kind of thinking about your form and just like giving it what you can. And I think sometimes pushing to failure can be something that I would recommend. And other times having more like 2 to 3 reps in the tank is going to be more optimal. So a rep where pushing to failure isn't going to cause too much stress might be like a bicep curl or a lateral raise, right? If you can't do another rep, you just can't do another rep. It's perfectly safe to like go to failure on a lift like that. Whereas like a back squat, I wouldn't recommend going to failure. It's just not needed to grow. And it's also not always the safest thing. I would rather we're pushing in that 65 to 85 kind of percent of to failure than going to failure in more of, I would say, the lifts, especially lower body ones. So we already hit on progressive overload, and then rest and recovery, allowing for that 48 hours to 72 hours between sessions. And that's going to be a little bit variable. I would recommend tracking soreness, tracking energy, tracking just recovery after you're lifting. And that will help you know if you're more in that 48 hour, if you can kind of get away with that, or the 72 hours. We program 72 for HF Physique. But also, like, listen to your body. If you feel fatigued, adjust your intensity or skip any optional sessions. And if you feel really strong, then take an opportunity to push yourself. I think different times throughout the month, you'll probably notice different energy, maybe when travel's involved. Like, our lives are very dynamic. And so not being so rigid, but taking advantage when you can. And then also sometimes we're just checking the box, and that's okay. Those days where we're just checking the box are the days that we're maintaining a habit and we're building consistency, and that adds up over time. The role of nutrition in building muscle. So talking about nutrition, we're going to get a lot more into this obviously over the coming weeks, but what you eat and when you eat can make a difference in your progress. First of all, calories are king. So to build muscle, you'll need to be on the high end of maintenance for most people, or a slight calorie surplus. That doesn't mean you can't build muscle in a calorie deficit. It's just way harder. We have fewer blocks to kind of give to that. And usually we're just trying to survive when we're in a calorie deficit. So having more food is going to allow for more energy and just more building blocks so that we can grow. So you're eating a little bit more probably than you're burning in the day. If you really want to prioritize building muscle, if you want to prioritize recomping, where you're kind of ideally like losing body fat and building muscle at the same time, then you want to be more in that maintenance to maybe the high end of maintenance or low end, just depending on kind of goals and like what is naturally easy for you. So in my case, I build muscle really, really easily. I maintain it pretty easily. And so if I want to recomp, I'm usually on the low end of maintenance, where maybe I know Sam has mentioned she's has a harder time building muscle. So she would probably want to be on the high end of maintenance. And then just like start there and track progress. How are your lifts improving? How's energy? How's sleep? How's recovery? How's your body changing? How are measurements? And then from there, like we're just tweaking. We're not doing any big overhauls. We're maybe adding a little bit of food or taking away a little bit of food and making adjustments. And then on the protein side of things, we kind of talked about that, but some good sources of protein would be lean meats, fish, eggs on the vegetarian side, tofu, dairy, if you can handle that digestion wise, is really great for kind of filling in the gaps. Protein shakes can be a convenient way to hit your protein targets when you're on the go. And then talking about carbohydrates, these are really helpful for fueling your workouts and replenishing glycogen stores after you train. So if you're not eating enough carbs, your workouts are going to feel harder and you likely will not recover as quickly. So I would recommend prioritizing carbs and protein around your training sessions. Some good sources of carbohydrates could be things like oatmeal, rice, fruit, vegetables, whole grain bread, tubers, squash. And pairing those with protein will help optimize recovery even better. So thinking if there's anything else here. Oh, talking about hydration. So hydration is often overlooked. We're busy. A lot of us are moms, a lot of us are working moms. It can be easy to forget about water sometimes and maybe just like drink coffee all day. So making sure that you are hydrated, because even mild dehydration can hurt your energy and training intensity. So a good rule of thumb would be at least 100 ounces of water per day, maybe more if you are very active. Along with water, electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium are important for muscle function. And you can get those from foods like bananas, avocados, leafy greens, but also electrolyte drinks as well. Okay, setting expectations and goals. Obviously, we're not going to build like a life-changing amount of muscle in 5 weeks. The goal for us here is to give you the tools and education and support so that you feel really empowered in building muscle. We'll also do an 8-week extension for those that want to continue with us beyond. But I will say, for women, a 0.5 pound to 1 pound of muscle gain per month is a realistic goal. So if you have a DEXA scan, highly recommend getting one if you have one in your area. That will give you kind of an idea of like where you're at with current muscle, overall muscle on your frame. And then from there, setting a goal of like, okay, what's realistic for me? Maybe building a pound. And I mean, potentially you could be building more than that, but I would say for most people, a 0.5 pound to 1 pound a month is kind of a realistic. So keeping that in mind and setting goals in a realistic way, it's going to take time to build muscle, but every 0.5 pound to 1 pound that you build is going to start to change how your body's looking. Things like age, genetics, experience level with lifting, training consistency, all of those things are going to play a role in how much muscle that you can gain. If you're a beginner, you'll likely experience quicker results at first, but as you get more advanced, progress slows down. I will say though, as you are more advanced, I think it's easier to maintain muscle. Your body, the more kind of like lifting years you have under your belt, the easier it is to maintain. I have, I don't know, about 20 years at least of consistent lifting under my belt, and I don't have to do much to maintain my muscle tissue anymore. Where if you're starting out, it does take a lot more focus and energy to build than to maintain. So I think the main key is to focus on the long game. There's definitely no quick fixes for building lean tissue. But consistency beats perfection. You don't need to be perfect to build muscle. Small efforts definitely add up over time. Skipping a workout or like falling off on your nutrition is not going to derail your progress. What really matters most is just showing up consistently week after week in whatever capacity you have, even if things aren't going perfectly. Checking the box is going to move the needle. So visible changes I would say for most women, it takes about 3 to 6 months of consistent training to start noticing visible changes in muscle tone and body composition. Um, Often other people maybe will notice your progress before you do. This is where like taking photos, taking measurements, tracking your lifts can also be really helpful. I think in a muscle building phase, tracking your performance can be really, really gratifying and fun to do. And it helps you measure progress in a way that isn't tied directly to your appearance. So celebrating things like PRs, lifting heavier weights, increasing reps, or even, having like better conditioning with your lifting sessions. These wins will help you stay motivated in making and like see the progress that you're making, even if the mirror isn't telling the full story. I would say too, like one of the most important things are avoiding comparison. It's really easy to fall into the comparison trap, especially with social media and just remembering that everyone's body and journey are unique and focusing on your own progress and what you've achieved. And something I always tell clients and friends is, maybe we have this goal of like building 10 pounds of muscle, and that's great. That is an awesome goal, and it's probably going to feel really amazing when you get there. But every pound you gain to get to that 10 pounds is an improvement and something worth celebrating. Like you're going to feel better with every pound of lean tissue you gain. And so not thinking that like you're going to get to that 10 pounds, maybe in a year and like have arrived, you're always going to want to continue to improve. We're human. That's just part of life. And so like really celebrating the small wins along the way will make the process way more rewarding. So kind of lastly, as we have our prep week, I would recommend like reading through all of the materials that we've given you. Make sure that you fill out the macro form if you haven't yet, and we'll set your intake for you. We will start next week our habit focus, and you'll see those on your dashboard. Some people crept into the challenge after the deadline, and I had to manually add habits. So if that's you and I missed you on adding the habits, you don't see them on your dashboard next Monday, then just message me and I'll add those for you. But you should see our weekly focus for the next 4 weeks is going to be to hit your protein goal within 10% and hit your calories within 10% and do 3 HF workouts per week, with like an asterisk to that. Like if you're not doing an HF resistance training workout, then make sure you are doing a resistance training workout that you can apply progressive overload to. And then our week 1 habit focus is going to be 100 ounces of water per day. We already talked about hydration and why it's important. Our hydration level is really like kind of number 1 focus, I think, when starting out. And then also with that, daily creatine supplementation. This is kind of a new one and not one we've ever had before on habits, but I wanted to suggest this for you because creatine is really, really helpful when it comes to building muscle. It's one of the most studied supplements for muscle performance, and creatine works by increasing your ATP production, which gives you more energy during exercise. So taking 3 to 5 grams of creatine daily is going to help you, like a small amount, but everything matters. It's going to allow for you to lift heavier, recover faster, and build muscle more efficiently. I just mix it in with my water or my Perk Energy in the morning, or I think Autumn mixes it in with her coffee. It really doesn't matter. Just taking it every day is important. There are some like timing benefits, but they're really, really minuscule. So I just take it every morning when I wake up, whether I'm lifting or not. You will likely, creatine helps bring water into our muscles as well. So you'll probably notice some water retention initially. That usually kind of comes off about 2 to 3 weeks in, I would say. And it's good. Like we want to be hydrated. That allows us to feel better and be more energized. I will also say, even if you're not focused on building muscle, taking creatine is going to benefit you immensely. There's a lot of new research showing huge cognitive benefits with taking creatine. So if you haven't ever taken it and have questions, let us know. We'll be sending out a supplement guide next week too, as we kind of kick off week 1. So stay tuned for that as well. And then also the other habit. So these ones, I want you to get 100 ounces of water a day and daily creatine. And then if you can, these are like bonuses, you guys. The water is the main focus, but if you're able to get in that creatine, we're not giving you points or anything for this. This is more just like for you to benefit. Getting in the daily creatine, and then fish oil, a high quality fish oil supplement, or even better, eating fatty fish. Omega-3 fatty acids are found in fish like salmon. We'll use the acronym SMASH fish. So sardines, mackerel, anchovies, herring, salmon. These are all fatty fish that are high in omega-3s, and omega-3s play a huge role in muscle recovery and growth because they help reduce inflammation and improve muscle protein synthesis. They're also really good for joint health, which, can be a struggle when we're lifting, like we're sore, our joints feel inflamed. So having a good omega-3 supplement, I like Nordic Naturals brand, or even better, just like eating more salmon is going to help for us to feel good during and after our workouts. So those are the goals for week 1 next week. Start kind of practicing this week. Week 1 habits, really just like we want to set the right foundation, staying hydrated, taking creatine, getting enough omega-3s, hitting your protein and calorie goals, and working out consistently are all together going to help you feel your best. Resources in the email are the muscle building guide, and that I already talked about, our HF nutrition guide, and then the customizable meal template and grocery list. So take advantage of those. This is the week to ask all of the questions. I mean, every week is the week to ask all the questions, but be sure to ask questions this week as you're prepping for week 1. Let us know what we can do to help. I think I see one in the chat. Do you have a good recommendation for? Yeah, I use Nordic Naturals. There are good brands out there beyond that, but the reason we chose that one, they do third-party testing, and I think they had like the highest rating of like not being rancid. That's an issue with fish oil, is that can happen if it's not from a quality source. And so where you source it is important. I don't know if Autumn or Sam, do you guys have another brand that you recommend for fish oil? You use the same one? Yeah. Yeah. I just get it on Amazon, or we have a health food store nearby, so we run out sometimes and get it there when we need to. Creatine. Okay, so with creatine, the brand really doesn't matter, you guys. You want to get a micronized creatine monohydrate. That's going to be the easiest to absorb. If it's micronized, it's not like you don't have to have micronized, but I found it to be like, I don't notice it. It doesn't upset my tummy. No issues there. So really, whatever's cheapest on Amazon, I get unflavored. I think that there is like there's a gold standard kind of, and I can't remember what the keyword is, but really, do you guys have a brand that you use? I just
I just get mine off
concrete.
Amazon. Like,
Yeah,
But
I just Amazon.
but
It's like a
I've used it for years, and so I just keep using it.
yeah.
I like little scoops because I don't like a lot of volume in my creatine, because a lot of times I just shoot it dry. So this is works for me. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking through. Oh, and then someone said, let's see. Can you guys see me? I'm still sharing my screen, right? I'm like trying to figure out
Yeah.
why it's not. There we go. Screen sharing stopped. Did that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to I was trying to read the other question. Similar, how much creatine a day? 3 to 5 grams is recommended. I do 5. Maybe if you're new, you could start with 3. And just make sure you feel good. And then, does step count matter in muscle gain like it does in fat loss? Should we be decreasing steps? I mean, if you're at just a crazy high amount of steps, then I would probably decrease. But most of us don't need to worry about that. If you're anywhere in the like 7 to 15,000 steps a day range, I think that's okay. I would more so focus on not overdoing it on cardio, especially any high intensity cardio. But steps should be okay. If you're over 15,000 steps, then yes, I would probably decrease that, as that may hinder your ability to put on muscle, but it kind of comes down to recovery, like see how you feel. Good. We're actually sending out 50 grams. We're sending out a lot of meal ideas. I think it's in this next email for the 50 grams of protein. And maybe I'll send that out ahead of time though. How much creatine a day? Said that. Similar to steps, should we still be doing cardio during muscle gain? Yeah, I think cardio is important for our health and longevity, but not, I would do it on your non-lifting days is what I would recommend. Anything else to add, ladies?
I was just gonna say, as you move through the week with your new goals that we send out, kind of if it overwhelms you, because sometimes it'll feel like it's a lot, but we're just giving you enough fuel, right? So it's not a lot of food, it's not an excessive amount, it's just enough. So if you kind of tell yourself mentally, like, this is just really what my body needs to kick off in, it's a lot easier to kind of break that down instead of thinking it's so overwhelming. It's just enough fuel to get you recovered.
And a lot
Yeah.
of us are used to eating high volume foods if we're chronic dieters. So instead, we need to focus more on the lower volume foods. So yes, we still want to get our vegetables in, but maybe you lean a little bit more towards the starchier vegetables. You can choose a little bit fattier meats than maybe what you're used to. If you're used to eating like chicken tenders, eat some chicken thighs, or go a little bit fattier in your beef. Add a little bit of oil more than you're used to, or to cooking. You can go for more of the fruits like bananas as opposed to like berries. Little things like that can help to kind of get in more calories without staying too full. And maybe you do have more liquid calories. Maybe you have a shake instead of a morning breakfast if you're just trying to ease into getting used to eating those lower volume foods to not be so full, to be able to get in the calories that we recommend for you.
Yeah, and also like dairy, like if you're having low fat dairy right now, switching to full fat dairy. That's a really easy way to increase calories without like rethinking the wheel. Is that the right way to say that? Rethinking the wheel.
And like add
And you could
more
just,
of
a
the
lot of
foods
times
that
you could
you're
just
already
make your
eating.
carbs right.
Yeah.
Just like if you're used to having a fourth a cup of oats, eat a half a cup, or a little bit more. Just adjust those, especially the carbs are a lot easier, and even the fats a little bit too.
And same with protein. Like if you are struggling to hit your protein goal, if you're eating 2 to 3 ounces of protein in a meal, like you can eat more, eat 4 to 6. And then I usually will eat 4 to 6, and then I'll add in some dairy, like cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, or even like legumes to help kind of increase fiber and protein, is a good way to round out a meal as well.
And it's just thinking about splitting it out throughout the day too, instead of that can make your day so much easier. So if you need 150 grams of protein, splitting it evenly between, 3 meals, or yeah, I would now do 3 meals, but maybe one little snack. It makes it a lot easier to be able to plan ahead as opposed to
Yeah.
just shooting it like playing on a whim.
Yes, I highly recommend this week as you're getting your macros back, like pre-log your day. Just 5 minutes, 10 minutes before, 10 minutes like on MyFitnessPal before you go to bed can go so far with having a template for the next day so that you know kind of like what you need to eat at each meal to hit your goals. And then if the day changes, that's okay. You can like you have a plan and you can adjust. But it's a lot easier to adjust knowing what you need to hit versus just trying to wing it.
Yeah.
And any other questions?
So
We're so excited.
the calories we got, are they based on maintenance or surplus? So I did it based off of, so if people are coming off dieting, I kind of put them more towards the lower end of maintenance, and we can kind of work our way up as we go throughout the challenge. And then the ones that are just ready to build, not coming off a deficit, or they're okay with, like gaining amount weight, I put them at the higher end of maintenance. And Only a few probably in a surplus, but most of them high end of maintenance, or like I said, if they're coming from the fat loss cohort or chronic dieters, I put them towards the lower end of maintenance.
Yep. So then if you're on the low end of maintenance, like you might find, oh, I'm losing weight. So like we can make adjustments there, but we'd rather be conservative for all of you on that end. And then knowing that this is somewhat individualized, what's a good goal for muscle mass or body fat percent for women? I think a good goal initial goal is to hit 100 pounds of lean tissue. I think like that's a really great goal for most women in that 100 to 110 pounds. If you are above that, then maybe looking more at body fat percentage. That's going to kind of vary. The more muscle tissue that you have, I think the lower body fat percentage you can maintain and feel really good. So like someone that has 130 pounds of lean tissue could probably maintain and have really good hormones, feel really good at like 18% body fat. But someone that has 60 pounds of lean tissue, would probably not feel good at 18% body fat. They would probably need to be a little bit higher. So, oh, that was another question. I think it really, like, if you have access to a DEXA scan, I would say just going and seeing where you're at and then setting a goal from there, knowing it's going to be about a half pound to a pound, maybe a pound and a half of muscle gained per month. That will kind of help you determine like what's realistic for you in timeline and expectations. And then the rest kind of comes down to individual. Like I personally know where I feel really good. And that's based off of years of getting DEXA scans and like knowing where my body fat percentage and muscle tissue was at those stages. So it's going to be kind of individual to like stress levels, genetics, the amount of muscle on your frame, but that's essentially what I would say. Like shooting to have 100 pounds of muscle on your frame is a really great goal for women. Would you guys add anything to that?
I mean, I was just gonna agree, like some people, they can get a bit leaner and not have their cycle affected, whereas others, they can't, or they, you know, their period starts to be affected, or they lose their period, and that's just telling us it's too low. Gotta keep it a little bit higher for that person.
Yeah, so looking at like the amount of tissue, muscle tissue on your frame, but then also your body's biofeedback, that's going to tell us a lot. So paying attention to that as well. Will we be changing calories to tweak during the 4 weeks, or do we take the initiative to let the coach know that we don't think the calories are working? Yeah, we definitely don't need to tweak calories over the 4 weeks unless there is like an issue. Like if you're losing weight or you feel like you're not progressing at all, or you're just like so full, you can't even think about eating another meal. Those would be times where I would like you to reach out to us. Otherwise, like this is just like probably enough time at the end of the 4 weeks to kind of assess like really how our lift's improving, how's energy, how are measurements, how are photos. We'll kind of start to see things changing at that point. And we can definitely, we're always here to adjust if needed. You just likely won't need an adjustment. You likely won't hit a plateau during the first 4 weeks. So for protein this week, just so I understand, is our goal minus 10% plus or minus? So if you're 10% over the goal or 10% under the goal, that's like a great place to be for most. But I would say if starting out, you're likely not going to be 10% over the goal. Any other questions? Well, we are so excited to kick off this group, and we will be in the app. If you don't have your macros yet, make sure you filled out the form. I think I just saw I'm getting a couple like email things, so I'll be responding to those, and we'll just use this week to prepare for next week. So ask all the questions, look through the guides, and let us know if there's anything else you need. And we're excited to kick off week 1 with all of you on Monday. You can use MyFitnessPal syncs with our app, or you can also use the HF app. So when you had your macro set, whoever set them for you, just ask them. They can help you with syncing if needed, but you can, if you want to track in the app, you can. We just need to switch that on our end.
Yeah, to sync, you just go to your profile. It's the icon all the way to the right, scroll down, click ask to connect, make sure your MyFitnessPal is set to public.
Yes. Yeah, so you can see it on your dashboard. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Tuesday and happy Halloween.